The moment at Tyler's graduation ceremony will forever be burned into my memory. David whispered his bombshell announcement just as our son walked across the stage. My world shattered in an instant, but I maintained my composure. I reached into my purse, pulled out a sealed envelope, and handed it to David with a calm smile. No problem, but first have a look at this. David's confident smirk faded as he opened it. I watched his face drain of color as he read the contents, realizing his perfect plan just crumbled. That morning started like any other graduation day should for proud parents. I woke up at 6:30 in our beautiful suburban home in Denver, Colorado, sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows as I prepared David's favorite breakfast: blueberry pancakes, turkey bacon, and fresh orange juice. After graduation, we married in a small ceremony at my parents' church in Colorado Springs. I had planned to continue my marketing career, but when Tyler was born 2 years later, we decided I should stay home to raise him properly. David worked his way up from junior accountant to partner at Peterson and Associates within 10 years. We bought our 4-bedroom house in Highlands Ranch when Tyler was 8, complete with a 2-car garage and a backyard perfect for hosting barbecues. I volunteered at Tyler's school, managed our household, and supported David's career ambitions. We seemed to have the perfect American dream life. Over the years, I noticed David became increasingly controlling about our finances. He insisted on managing all our accounts because it was more efficient, and I didn't understand the complexities of investment strategies. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the father of my child, and a respected financial professional. I focused on raising Tyler and maintaining our home, while David handled everything related to money. Looking back, I realize how naive I was. I never questioned why he suddenly wanted to consolidate all our accounts under his management 3 years ago. I didn't think twice when he explained that our retirement funds needed to be moved to better performing portfolios that only he could access. I even signed documents without reading them carefully because David assured me they were routine financial updates. The warning signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. David started working late more frequently, claiming demanding clients required his personal attention. He bought new clothes without mentioning it, joined an expensive golf club, and became secretive about his phone calls. When I asked about these changes, he told me I was being paranoid and suspicious. He convinced me that successful men at his level needed to maintain certain appearances for business purposes. 3 weeks before Tyler's graduation, everything changed. I was doing laundry when I found David's golf bag in the garage. While organizing his golf accessories, I discovered a small phone hidden in a side pocket. It wasn't his regular iPhone. This was a cheap flip phone with no identifying marks. My hands trembled as I turned it on, not knowing what I might find. The text messages I discovered made my blood run cold. Months of explicit conversations and intimate photos between David and Sarah, his 26-year-old assistant. But the content revealed something far worse than a simple affair. They were planning to drain our bank accounts and disappear together right after Tyler's graduation ceremony. David referred to me in their messages as the clueless housewife who would never figure out their scheme until it was too late. In that moment, standing in our garage surrounded by the life we had built together, I realized that David had been systematically planning to destroy our family for months. He thought I was too trusting, too dependent, and too naive about financial matters to ever discover his betrayal. He was about to learn how wrong he was about his devoted wife. I first met Sarah 6 months ago at the firm's annual Christmas party at the downtown Marriott. She seemed sweet and respectful, calling me Mrs. Patterson and complimenting my emerald green cocktail dress. She appeared young and innocent, maybe fresh out of college, with shoulder-length blonde hair and bright blue eyes. I actually defended her when some of the other wives whispered about her short skirts and overly friendly behavior with the male partners. I thought they were just being catty about a young woman trying to establish herself in a professional environment. Sarah made a point of engaging me in conversation that night, asking about Tyler's college plans and my volunteer work at the local animal shelter. She seemed genuinely interested in my life, which I found refreshing since most of David's colleagues treated me like an accessory rather than an individual. I remember thinking how lucky David was to have such a dedicated assistant who clearly respected our marriage and family. After finding David's secret phone, I knew I needed professional help to uncover the truth. I hired private investigator Rachel Martinez, a former FBI agent who specialized in marital investigations. Rachel came highly recommended from my divorce attorney friend, Jennifer Walsh, who I contacted under the pretense of needing legal advice for a hypothetical situation. Rachel's investigation revealed information that shattered every assumption I had made about Sarah. Her real name was Amanda Chen, and she was far from the innocent young professional she pretended to be. Rachel discovered that Sarah was actually a sophisticated con artist with an extensive criminal history spanning 3 different states. She specifically targeted established men approaching midlife crises, studying their families and financial situations before systematically destroying their marriages while emptying their bank accounts. The investigative report contained photographs, financial records, and police reports documenting Sarah's previous schemes. In Phoenix, she had convinced a 52-year-old dentist to embezzle from his practice and abandon his family of 25 years. In Las Vegas, she manipulated a casino manager into stealing from company accounts before disappearing with over $200,000. Each time, she used a different identity and carefully researched her target's personal vulnerabilities. Rachel showed me how Sarah operated. She would apply for assistant positions at established businesses, specifically targeting firms where partners had access to client funds. She studied the wives through social media, learning their interests, habits, and relationship dynamics. Sarah knew exactly how to present herself as everything the wife wasn't. If the wife was conservative, Sarah would be adventurous. If the wife was traditional, Sarah would be modern and career-focused. The most shocking discovery came when Rachel presented me with medical records she had obtained through her law enforcement contacts. Sarah was indeed pregnant, and she had been telling David the baby was his. David was over the moon about becoming a father again at age 45, especially since he always wanted more children, but I had complications after Tyler's birth that required a hysterectomy. However, the medical timeline proved that Sarah was already 4 months pregnant, but she had only been involved with David for 3 months. The pregnancy was from her previous mark, the casino manager in Las Vegas. Rachel had tracked down medical records showing Sarah had been receiving prenatal care in Nevada before she even moved to Colorado and applied for the job at David's firm. Sarah had been lying to David about the pregnancy from the very beginning, using his desire for another child to manipulate him into more reckless behavior. She convinced him that they needed to secure their financial future quickly because of the baby. This fictitious pregnancy was the catalyst that pushed David from having an affair to committing actual crimes. Rachel's investigation also revealed that Sarah had been in contact with David for over a year before she was hired. She had researched our family through public records, social media accounts, and business databases. She knew about our financial situation, Tyler's college expenses, my volunteer activities, and even my medical history. This wasn't a chance encounter or workplace romance that got out of hand. Sarah had specifically targeted David as her next victim, based on his access to client funds and what she perceived as his marital vulnerabilities. The evidence showed that Sarah had actually reached out to David through a fake LinkedIn profile, posing as a potential client interested in investment advice. She arranged to meet him at a coffee shop near his office, where she charmed him with her financial knowledge and professional ambitions. Within 2 weeks, she had applied for the assistant position that conveniently became available when his previous assistant retired. I realized that everything about Sarah's personality and interests had been carefully crafted to appeal to David's ego and dissatisfactions. She claimed to share his love of golf, his taste in wine, and his frustration with what he perceived as my lack of ambition. Sarah had studied our marriage like a research project, identifying every crack in our relationship and exploiting them systematically. The most disturbing aspect of Rachel's report was the psychological profile she had compiled on Sarah. According to criminal psychologist Dr. Michael Thompson, Sarah displayed classic traits of a sociopathic manipulator. She felt no genuine emotional attachment to any of her victims. David wasn't the love of her life or even a romantic interest. He was simply a resource to be exploited until she had extracted maximum value from the relationship. As I sat in Rachel's office reviewing the evidence, I felt a mixture of rage and determination I had never experienced before. David had fallen for a professional criminal who saw our 20-year marriage as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome. Sarah had been playing a role designed specifically to destroy our family, and David had willingly participated in that destruction. The financial investigation that followed revealed the true scope of David's betrayal. Working with forensic accountant Jennifer Walsh, I discovered that David had been systematically stealing from our family for over 8 months. The theft started small, with unexplained withdrawals of $200 or $300 that he attributed to cash flow management for the business. These amounts gradually increased to thousands of dollars being transferred monthly to accounts I had never seen. Jennifer showed me how David had manipulated our financial records to hide his theft. He created fake investment statements showing healthy returns on our retirement accounts when the reality was that those accounts had been nearly emptied. The $400,000 we had accumulated over 20 years of marriage had been funneled through a series of shell companies that Sarah helped him establish using her various false identities. The documentation revealed that David had convinced me to sign papers consolidating all our accounts under his sole management by claiming it would provide better tax advantages and investment opportunities. I remembered signing those documents in his office, trusting his expertise completely. I never realized I was essentially signing away my rights to monitor or access our own money. David had also taken out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge, forging my signature on the loan documents. The $200,000 home equity loan had been approved based on David's financial credentials and our property value. Jennifer explained that while the forgery was clearly illegal, proving it would require extensive legal proceedings that could take years to resolve. The shell companies David created were sophisticated financial instruments designed to obscure money trails. Using Sarah's criminal contacts and false identification documents, they established businesses in Delaware and Nevada that existed only on paper. Our stolen money was transferred through these companies to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, jurisdictions known for protecting financial privacy. Jennifer's forensic analysis revealed that David had also been embezzling from his own accounting firm. Client trust funds meant for tax payments and investment accounts had been diverted through the same shell company network. The total amount of stolen client money exceeded $700,000, making this a federal crime with serious prison implications. The timeline of David's theft coincided perfectly with Sarah's employment at his firm. Before her arrival, David had been a model partner with no financial irregularities in his client management. Within 2 months of hiring Sarah, the first suspicious transactions appeared in the firm's accounts. Sarah had been systematically teaching David how to steal from his clients while making the theft appear legitimate through false documentation. David's plan was devastatingly thorough. He had researched extradition laws and identified Costa Rica as an ideal location for avoiding prosecution. The country had limited extradition agreements with the United States, especially for financial crimes. Sarah had been making arrangements for their relocation, including renting a house in San Jose and establishing banking relationships under her false identity. The most painful discovery was finding David's handwritten notes outlining his strategy for abandoning our family. He had calculated that I would be financially ruined within 6 months of his departure. Without access to our savings or his income, I would be forced to sell our house to pay legal fees and living expenses. David believed I was too naive and financially dependent to recover from his betrayal. His notes revealed that he planned to file for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences while requesting spousal support from my future earnings. Since I had been out of the workforce for 18 years, David assumed I would have minimal earning potential. He calculated that he could demand support payments while keeping our stolen money safely hidden in offshore accounts. David's planning extended to destroying evidence of his crimes. He had been systematically deleting financial records and email communications related to the theft. His home computer had been wiped clean multiple times, and he had been shredding documents regularly. The only reason Jennifer could reconstruct the financial timeline was through bank records and business filings that David couldn't access or destroy. The psychological cruelty of David's planning became clear when Jennifer showed me his calendar notations. He had specifically chosen Tyler's graduation day to announce his departure because he wanted to make a clean break when the family was together. David thought the public setting would prevent me from making a scene, and that Tyler's graduation would provide cover for his emotional detachment from the situation. Most devastating was discovering that David had been lying about wanting to attend family events for months. Every holiday, dinner, birthday celebration, and school activity had been an act while he planned our destruction. He had been calculating how much longer he needed to maintain the charade while Sarah finalized their escape preparations. Jennifer explained that David's theft would likely be prosecuted as wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement under federal law. The amounts involved and the interstate nature of the shell companies elevated this beyond simple marital infidelity. David was facing potential prison sentences of 10 to 15 years if convicted on all charges. As I reviewed the evidence with Jennifer, I realized that David had underestimated my intelligence and determination. He assumed I would collapse under the weight of his betrayal and accept whatever financial scraps he chose to leave behind. Instead, his meticulous planning would become the evidence needed to destroy him completely. The investigation also revealed that our homeowner's insurance and David's professional liability policies included coverage for theft and fraud. If David was convicted of embezzling client funds, the insurance companies would be required to compensate his victims, including our family. This meant we could potentially recover most of our stolen money through legal channels David never considered. I spent countless hours with Jennifer, learning about financial systems I had ignored for 20 years. She taught me how to read bank statements, understand investment portfolios, and recognize signs of financial manipulation. For the first time in my adult life, I was taking control of my own financial education and security. The morning of Tyler's graduation dawned crisp and clear, typical Colorado weather for late May. I forced myself to go through our normal routine, making David's favorite breakfast of blueberry pancakes and turkey bacon. As I cooked, I watched him check his phone repeatedly, obviously receiving updates from Sarah about their final preparations. He had no idea that I knew every detail of their plan. David seemed almost giddy with nervous energy, humming while he showered and spending extra time grooming himself in the mirror. He kept making comments about how today changes everything for our family and how proud he was of the man Tyler had become. The irony was devastating. He was planning to destroy our family on the day we should have been celebrating our son's greatest achievement. I had barely slept for 3 weeks, knowing that this day would bring the confrontation that would end our marriage. The stress was overwhelming, but I had to maintain perfect composure. David could not suspect that I had discovered his plans, or he might accelerate his timeline and disappear before I could execute my own strategy. Getting dressed for the ceremony was surreal. I chose a navy blue dress with a matching jacket, wanting to look dignified and composed for what I knew would be the most important day of my life. As I applied my makeup, I stared at my reflection and promised myself that I would not let David see me break down. Whatever happened at that graduation, I would maintain my dignity and protect my son. The drive to the University of Colorado campus was torture. David chatted cheerfully about Tyler's engineering degree and his bright future while I sat silently, knowing that he planned to abandon our son within hours. Tyler had worked so hard for this moment, graduating summa cum laude with a degree in mechanical engineering and already having a job lined up with a Denver aerospace company. At the graduation venue, I sat between David and my mother, watching hundreds of families celebrate their children's achievements. The ceremony was beautiful, with speeches about new beginnings and bright futures. I tried to focus on Tyler's accomplishment and ignore David's constant phone checking. Every few minutes, he would glance at his device and smile slightly, obviously receiving encouraging messages from Sarah. When Tyler's name was called, my heart swelled with pride and broke simultaneously. Here was my beautiful, intelligent son walking across that stage to receive his diploma, and his father was planning to traumatize him with a devastating announcement within the hour. I applauded and cheered for Tyler while tears ran down my face, hoping David would assume they were tears of joy. After the ceremony, families gathered outside for photographs and celebrations. I took pictures with Tyler, David, and my mother, forcing smiles while my world prepared to collapse. Tyler looked so handsome in his cap and gown, beaming with accomplishment and excitement about his future. I memorized every detail of his happy face, knowing this might be the last time our family would be together and joyful. That's when Tyler approached me privately while David was talking to another parent. My son looked nervous and upset, completely different from his celebratory mood moments earlier. He glanced around to make sure David couldn't hear, then leaned close to me. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Tyler whispered, his voice shaking. "I know about Dad and his assistant." My blood turned to ice. "What do you know, honey?" Tyler's eyes filled with tears. 2 weeks ago, she called me by mistake, thinking she was calling Dad. She was drunk and started talking about their plans to leave together and take all our money. She said Dad was finally going to be free from his boring wife and start a real life with her in Costa Rica. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My son had been carrying this devastating knowledge for 2 weeks, tormented about whether to tell me. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling his shoulders shake as he tried not to cry. She laughed about how clueless you were. Tyler continued, his voice filled with anger. She said Dad had been planning this for months and that you would be completely helpless without him. She talked about their fake companies and the money they'd been stealing. Mom, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. Tyler broke down completely, sobbing against my shoulder. I'm so sorry I didn't warn you. I was scared and confused, and I didn't want to ruin my graduation or hurt you even more. I've been feeling sick about this for weeks. I held my son tightly, realizing that David's betrayal had already traumatized the person we both claimed to love most. Tyler had been struggling with this terrible secret during what should have been the happiest time of his young life. David's selfishness had already damaged our child before he even made his official announcement. Tyler, listen to me, I said firmly, pulling back to look into his eyes. This is not your fault. You did nothing wrong by not telling me. You're 22 years old, and you should never have been put in this position by your father. I made a decision in that moment that would change everything. I couldn't let David hurt Tyler any more than he already had. Our son deserved to know that his mother was not the helpless victim David and Sarah believed her to be. Tyler needed to see that his father's betrayal would not destroy our family. Tyler, I need you to know something, I said quietly. I've known about your father's plans for 3 weeks. I hired a private investigator and I've been working with lawyers and accountants. Your father is about to get the biggest surprise of his life. Tyler's eyes widened with shock and relief. You knew? You've been investigating this. I nodded and smiled for the first time in weeks. Your father thinks I'm a naive housewife who will collapse when he leaves. He's about to learn that he's been married to someone much stronger than he ever realized. Tyler hugged me again, but this time his embrace was filled with admiration rather than desperation. Mom, you're amazing. I was so scared for you. As we walked back toward David, Tyler stood straighter and looked more confident. He had spent 2 weeks believing his family was about to be destroyed by his father's betrayal. Now he knew that his mother had been fighting back all along, and that David's perfect plan was about to crumble. David was checking his phone again when we approached, obviously receiving final updates from Sarah about their escape preparations. He looked up at us with a smile that made my stomach turn. In a few minutes, he would deliver the speech that he thought would devastate our family. Instead, it would be the moment when his own world came crashing down around him. The families around us were still celebrating, taking photos and making dinner plans, when David cleared his throat and asked to speak with Tyler and me privately. He led us to a quieter area near the parking structure, away from the crowds and festivities. I noticed he kept glancing at his phone, checking the time. Sarah was probably waiting nearby, ready to whisk him away once he completed his devastating announcement. David's demeanor completely changed once we were alone. The proud father act disappeared, replaced by cold calculation. He stood straighter, spoke more formally, and looked at Tyler and me as if we were business associates rather than his family. The transformation was so complete that Tyler unconsciously stepped closer to me for support. I need to tell you both something important, David began, his voice steady and emotionless. I've been unhappy in this marriage for years, and I've finally found someone who understands me and appreciates what I have to offer. I watched Tyler's face as his father spoke. My son's jaw clenched and his hands formed fists, but he remained silent. He was seeing his father's true character for the first time, and the disappointment in his eyes was heartbreaking. David continued his rehearsed speech. Sarah and I have been in a relationship for several months, and we've decided to start a new life together. She's pregnant with my child, and I want to give this baby the family and opportunities it deserves. The cruelty of using the fake pregnancy to justify his betrayal was staggering. David was essentially telling Tyler that his potential half-sibling was more important than our existing family. He was weaponizing his supposed desire for fatherhood to make his abandonment seem noble rather than selfish. I've already filed divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences, David announced, pulling folded documents from his jacket pocket. He'll be requesting spousal support since Christina has been out of the workforce for so long and has limited earning potential. The audacity was breathtaking. David was planning to steal our life savings and then demand that I pay him additional money from whatever meager income I might eventually earn. He had calculated that I would be so financially devastated that I would agree to anything to avoid prolonged legal battles. David then delivered the final blow. Our assets and savings have been transferred to protected accounts to ensure they're properly managed during this transition. Sarah and I will be relocating to Costa Rica, where I can establish a new practice and provide for my growing family. Tyler couldn't contain himself any longer. "You're stealing our money and abandoning us?" On my graduation day, David's response revealed his complete lack of remorse. "I earned that money through years of hard work while your mother contributed nothing financially to this family. I have every right to secure my future and that of my unborn child." He looked directly at me with what can only be described as contempt. "Christina, you've been living in a fantasy world where you think being a housewife and volunteer makes you valuable. The real world doesn't reward mediocrity. You'll need to learn to support yourself for the first time in your adult life." The psychological abuse was as devastating as the financial theft. David was trying to convince me that 20 years of raising his child, managing his household, and supporting his career was worthless. He wanted me to believe that I deserved to be abandoned and impoverished because I had chosen family over career advancement. David then turned to Tyler with even more cruelty. "Son, you're an adult now with your own life ahead of you. You need to choose sides wisely. Your mother will be financially ruined within months, while Sarah and I will be building something meaningful together. Think carefully about which future offers you more opportunities." I watched my son's face as his father essentially asked him to choose between his parents based on financial calculations. David was trying to bribe Tyler with promises of future support while threatening him with poverty if he remained loyal to me. The manipulation was so blatant and heartless that even David's practiced charm couldn't disguise it. Tyler looked at his father with disgust. "You want me to choose between my mother and your pregnant girlfriend?" On my graduation day, David shrugged as if Tyler's emotions were irrelevant. "I'm offering you practical advice about your future. Sentiment won't pay your bills or advance your career." The moment had arrived for my response. David stood there smugly, convinced that he had delivered a masterful performance that would leave Tyler and me devastated but ultimately compliant. He expected tears, begging, and desperate attempts to change his mind. He was prepared for emotional manipulation and guilt trips that would only strengthen his resolve to leave. Instead, I reached into my purse with hands that were surprisingly steady. My fingers found the manila envelope I had been carrying for 3 weeks, waiting for this exact moment. David's confidence was about to be shattered completely. I pulled out the envelope and handed it to David with a calm smile that seemed to confuse him. "No problem, David. But first, have a look at this." David took the envelope with the same arrogant confidence he had maintained throughout his speech. He obviously expected some pathetic emotional letter begging him to reconsider, or perhaps a desperate attempt to negotiate better terms for our divorce. He opened the envelope casually, almost dismissively. The change in David's expression was immediate and dramatic. His smug smile vanished as he pulled out the documents inside. His face went pale, then flushed red, then pale again as he read through page after page of evidence. His hands began to shake as the full scope of what I had discovered became clear. Tyler watched his father's reaction with satisfaction. "Surprise, Dad. Mom's not as clueless as you thought." David looked up at me with pure terror in his eyes. For the first time in our 20-year marriage, he realized that he had completely underestimated the woman he had been living with. His perfect plan was crumbling, and he had no idea how far ahead of him I had been for weeks. "How did you?" David stammered, his composed demeanor completely shattered. I maintained my calm smile. "How did I figure out that my devoted husband was planning to steal our life savings and abandon our family? You really should be more careful about hiding your burner phones." The envelope contained copies of everything Rachel Martinez had discovered during her investigation. Bank transfer records showing the movement of our stolen money, documentation of the shell companies David and Sarah had created, evidence of his embezzlement from client accounts, and copies of the forged mortgage documents. But those were just the opening pages of David's nightmare. I watched David's hands shake as he read through Sarah's criminal history. Photographs from her previous arrests, police reports detailing her fraud convictions, and documentation proving that she had systematically targeted and destroyed at least 3 other families. The woman he thought was his devoted young lover was actually a professional criminal who had studied him like a research project. Her real name is Amanda Chen, I said calmly, while David continued reading. She's wanted for fraud in Arizona and Nevada. That innocent assistant you fell in love with has been running this same con for years. Tyler stood beside me, watching his father's world collapse. Tell him about the pregnancy, Mom. David's eyes widened as he found the medical records in the envelope. The timeline proving that Sarah was 4 months pregnant when she had only been involved with David for 3 months. The documentation showing she had been receiving prenatal care in Las Vegas before she ever moved to Colorado and applied for the job at his firm. She was already pregnant when she started working for you, I explained. The baby belongs to her previous victim in Nevada. She's been lying to you about everything from the very beginning. David's face showed a mixture of shock, rage, and dawning understanding. He was realizing that Sarah had manipulated him just as thoroughly as he had tried to manipulate me. The pregnancy that had driven him to more desperate measures was completely fabricated. The woman he was planning to abandon his family for had been using him as her latest mark. But those revelations were nothing compared to what came next in the envelope. I had been 3 steps ahead of David for weeks, and he was about to learn exactly how thoroughly his plan had been exposed and dismantled. Keep reading, I encouraged him. The best parts are still coming. David found the FBI documentation that made his face go completely white. For 2 weeks, federal agents had been building a case against him for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. Agent Patricia Foster from the Denver field office had been coordinating with the Internal Revenue Service, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and international banking authorities to track down every dollar of stolen money. I reported your crimes to the FBI Financial Crimes Unit 3 weeks ago, I informed him. Agent Foster has been very interested in your shell company network and offshore banking arrangements. David's passport had been flagged in federal databases, preventing him from leaving the country. Any attempt to travel internationally would result in immediate arrest. His plan to escape to Costa Rica had been impossible for weeks, but he had been too arrogant and self-absorbed to notice that his movements were being monitored. Sarah won't be meeting you for your romantic getaway, Tyler added with satisfaction. She was arrested this morning trying to board a plane to Costa Rica. I pulled out my phone and showed David the booking photo that Agent Foster had sent me an hour earlier. Sarah, or Amanda Chen, in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, looking nothing like the confident young professional who had charmed her way into our lives. Her arrest had made the local news as part of a broader investigation into interstate fraud networks. David was hyperventilating as he continued reading. The envelope contained documentation that the offshore accounts had been frozen pending investigation. Every dollar he thought he had successfully hidden was now evidence in a federal criminal case. The money he had stolen from client accounts was also frozen, meaning that his law firm would discover the theft within days. The firm's insurance will compensate your victims, I explained, but you'll still be liable for criminal prosecution and civil restitution. I had also included copies of the wire recordings that Agent Foster had helped me obtain. For the past week, I had been wearing a recording device during conversations with David, capturing his admissions about the theft and his plans to abandon our family. His confession at Tyler's graduation had been recorded by federal agents positioned nearby. David's legs gave out, and he sat down heavily on a nearby bench, still clutching the documents that detailed his complete destruction. 20 years of building his reputation and career had been obliterated by his own greed and stupidity. He was facing federal prison time that would likely extend well into his 60s. How long have you known? He whispered. I found your burner phone 3 weeks ago, I replied. I've been working with investigators and attorneys ever since. You really should have hidden it better. Tyler stepped forward, towering over his father with disgust and disappointment. You thought Mom was stupid and helpless. Turns out you're the one who got completely played, but I wasn't finished. The envelope contained one more surprise that would complete David's humiliation. My mother stepped out from behind a nearby tree, where she had been recording our entire conversation with a video camera. Hello, David, my mother said coolly. I've been documenting this conversation for Agent Foster. Your confession will be very helpful at your trial. David's mouth fell open as he realized that our entire family had been working together to expose him. The naive housewife and dependent child he thought he could manipulate had actually been coordinating a sophisticated operation to protect ourselves and ensure justice. Mom hired an investigator months ago because she suspected something was wrong, Tyler explained. We've all been helping Christina build her case. The only person who didn't know what was happening was you. I looked down at David with a mixture of pity and satisfaction. You spent so much time planning to destroy our family that you never considered we might be smarter, stronger, and more resourceful than you gave us credit for. David tried to speak, but no words came out. He was realizing that every conversation, every lie, every manipulative comment had been recorded and documented. His perfect crime had become his complete downfall, and there was absolutely nothing he could do to escape the consequences. The FBI will be arresting you within the hour, I informed him. Agent Foster wanted to let you enjoy your graduation speech before taking you into custody. As if on cue, 3 federal agents approached our location. David looked around desperately, but there was nowhere to run and no one to help him. His criminal partner was already in jail. His escape route was blocked, and his family had become the instruments of his justice. Agent Patricia Foster introduced herself to David and began reading him his rights. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, I felt a satisfaction I had never experienced before. The man who had tried to destroy our family was finally facing the consequences of his choices. Tyler put his arm around my shoulders as we watched his father being led away. Mom, you saved our family, he said quietly. I looked at my son, realizing that David's betrayal had revealed strengths I never knew I possessed. Our family had not only survived his attack, but we had fought back and won decisively. 3 months after David's arrest, I stood in the kitchen of our home making breakfast for Tyler and myself. The house felt different now. Lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. Tyler had decided to move back home temporarily after graduation to support me through the legal proceedings. And our relationship had grown stronger than ever through the shared experience of fighting for our family's survival. David had pleaded guilty to 12 federal charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, and conspiracy. His attorney advised him to accept a plea agreement rather than face trial, where additional evidence would likely result in even harsher sentences. He received 4 years in federal prison and was required to pay full restitution to his firm, our family, and the other victims of his crimes. Sarah, whose real name was Amanda Chen, had been extradited to face charges in multiple states. Her criminal network had been thoroughly dismantled, resulting in arrests and convictions across the country. The pregnancy that had motivated David to take greater risks was terminated during her arrest medical examination. There had never been a baby, just another lie in her elaborate con game. The financial recovery exceeded everyone's expectations. David's conviction triggered insurance policies that compensated his firms, clients, and our family for the stolen money. The offshore accounts were repatriated through international law enforcement cooperation, returning most of our $400,000 in savings. The forged mortgage was voided due to the fraudulent documentation, restoring full equity in our home. I had made an unexpected discovery during the financial investigation. My father had left me a substantial inheritance that I had forgotten about, money that had been sitting in a trust account managed by his estate attorney. David had never known about these funds because they predated our marriage, and I had never accessed them because we hadn't needed the money during our comfortable married life. This inheritance provided additional financial security that made David's theft less devastating than he had intended. The most surprising development was the job offer I received from Patterson and Associates. The senior partners had been impressed with how I handled the crisis and exposed David's crimes, potentially saving their firm from total destruction. They offered me a position managing client relations and business development, recognizing that my communication skills and life experience were valuable assets in rebuilding their reputation. At 40 years old, I found myself starting a career that was more rewarding than anything I could have imagined during my marriage. Working with the firm's clients who had been victimized by David's theft gave me purpose and satisfaction. I was helping people rebuild their financial security while using my own experience to guide them through the recovery process. Tyler's relationship with his father was permanently damaged, but he had gained respect and admiration for his mother that strengthened our family bond. He frequently told friends and colleagues about how his mom had outsmarted a criminal conspiracy and protected their family. Tyler was proud to be my son in ways that went beyond academic achievements or career success. 6 months after David's sentencing, I received an unexpected phone call from FBI agent Patricia Foster. David's case had led to uncovering a nationwide network of financial fraud targeting middle-aged wives and their families. The evidence I had gathered and the investigative techniques Rachel Martinez had used were being studied by law enforcement agencies across the country. Christina, we'd like to offer you a consulting position with our financial crimes unit, Agent Foster explained during our meeting at the Denver Federal Building. Your experience and insights could help us train other investigators and educate potential victims about these types of schemes. The consulting work became a passion project that connected me with women across the country who had experienced similar betrayals. I traveled to conferences and training seminars, sharing my story and teaching others how to recognize and respond to financial abuse. Each presentation reached dozens of wives who learned how to protect themselves and their families from predatory behavior. 1 year after Tyler's graduation, we celebrated the anniversary with a family dinner that included my mother, Tyler's girlfriend Jessica, and Rachel Martinez, who had become a close friend during our collaboration. We raised glasses of wine in the same restaurant where David had once taken Sarah for their secret romantic dinners. To learning that our greatest defeats can become our most powerful victories, I said, echoing words I had spoken many times during my speaking engagements. And to never again confusing kindness with weakness. Tyler hugged me tightly and whispered, "Mom, you didn't just save us. You showed me what real strength looks like." I looked around the table at the people who had supported me through the darkest period of my life and felt overwhelming gratitude. David's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also revealed capabilities and relationships I never would have discovered otherwise. His attempt to destroy our family had ultimately made us stronger and more connected than ever before. The consulting work with the FBI led to opportunities I could never have imagined as a traditional housewife. I was invited to speak at law enforcement conferences, contribute to academic research on financial fraud, and collaborate with victim advocacy organizations. My story became a case study taught in criminology courses and law school seminars. 2 years after David's imprisonment, Tyler graduated from an advanced engineering program and accepted a position with NASA in Houston. Before leaving Denver, he insisted on taking me to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city to celebrate everything we had accomplished together. "Dad thought he was teaching me about success and ambition," Tyler said over dessert. "But you taught me about resilience, integrity, and fighting for what's right. I'm proud to be your son, and I'll never let anyone treat the people I love the way he treated us." As I drove home that night, I reflected on the profound life lesson David's betrayal had taught me. For 20 years, I had defined myself through my relationships and service to others. I thought my value came from being a supportive wife and devoted mother. David's abandonment forced me to discover my own strength, intelligence, and capacity for leadership. The most important realization was that trust must be balanced with awareness. Love should never require surrendering personal power. And sometimes life's most painful betrayals reveal our greatest strengths. I learned to forgive David not for his benefit, but for my own peace and emotional freedom. Today, I mentor women who are rebuilding their lives after similar betrayals. Each conversation reminds me that David's cruelty ultimately became a gift by forcing me to become the strong, independent woman I was always capable of being. His attempt to minimize my worth taught me to value myself properly for the first time. The story I tell these women always ends the same way. Sometimes the people who try to break us actually set us free to become who we were meant to be all along. Have you ever had someone underestimate your strength, only to be surprised by what you were truly capable of when pushed to your limits? Share your thoughts in the comments below about how you've overcome betrayal or discovered hidden strengths during difficult times. Please like this video if Christina's story inspired you, and subscribe for more real stories about resilience and triumph. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might need encouragement that they're stronger than they know. Thank you for listening, and remember that your greatest challenges often become your most powerful victories.